Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terry Cole Show. Wow, I'm so excited, you guys. This interview is so juicy with David Mann and Ana Gabriel Mann. They wrote this really great book right here. It's called The Go-Giver Marriage, a little story about the 5 secrets to lasting love. And I really loved this book. I think that it is so incredibly solid. Let me tell you a little bit about them. So John has written more than 30 books, including 4 New York Times bestsellers, 5 national bestsellers. And Ana is a psychotherapist. She's a clinical psychologist, actually. And they've been married decades, and this is the first book that they have written together, which sort of brings together his structure around efficiency and effectiveness and her expertise as a clinical psychologist when it comes to love. Not to mention, they live because they're in a very healthy, happy relationship. So they've been wanting to write The Go-Giver Marriage since, I think, 2005 when John's other book came out. So this just came out. It's awesome. We talk a lot about the 5 things you should do in your relationship and the 5 things you really want to avoid. I so hope that you enjoy this interview with John and Ana as much as I enjoyed interviewing them. Wow, I'm super psyched to welcome John and Ana to the show. Welcome, people.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
Thank you.
So much to talk about. How I ended up having you on the show is I was listening to a interview that you did, and I literally heard one thing that you said, and I just said to my team, please see if we can get them. And what you guys said was, and I think, Ana, you were speaking, but it was that, people in a marriage were one full human, and then another full human, and then we come together to make this entity. And in my mind, it's like this entity that would never exist if you two exact people didn't get together, or me and my husband exactly didn't get together. But in treating the marriage sort of as the third partner in a relationship, I was like, yes. So anyway, I know the book is about so much more than that, but I'm so excited. The Go-Giver Marriage is what we're talking about today. It's a little story about the 5 secrets to lasting love. And I love the format of the book, parable, and then really applicable stuff. But before we get into any of that, I want to know how this particular book, with you guys doing it together, came about.
Well, first of all, we're totally charmed at what you just said. I'm so glad that you heard that thing that you liked. And it really is the heart of the book. So that's great. I wrote a book with a friend almost 20 years ago called The Go-Giver. It was the original Go-Giver book. And I've written over 30 books since then, but this was kind of the start of my career as an author. And when it was just a rough draft, and we had no publisher, I had no career, it was just a little funky rough draft of a book, slid out of my desktop printer and thumped on my desk. Ana picked it up and read it. Ana is the first reader of every book I've ever written. Right, so she's my first and best and most keenly critical reader. So she read it and she said, "This is awesome, and this describes the way we are. This is like a description of us. This would be a great book about marriage." So that was 17 years ago, and ever since then, we've been wanting to write this book. That book was about business, and we wanted to apply those principles, living with the spirit of generosity, to the world of marriage. So we finally have had that opportunity. This is Ana's wheelhouse. This is her life passion. This is her career. And now this is the first book we've written together. So
I really wanted to ask, since I just wrote my first book during the pandemic, how was it writing a book together?
It was surprisingly easy. Most people think that we must have been like remodeling a kitchen, that we went to war. But actually, we had already agreed on the format. What was important to me was that the back end of the book was functional, and that it explained the developmental side of where do these secrets come from, that it had some meat in terms of codependence and all the things that can go wrong in a relationship, and that it was functional to help people understand that when you change behaviors, the whole tone of the marriage changes. So, we both went into our offices and wrote. And every day we would send each other what we'd written, and we would sit over dinner and bat it around.
That's so interesting. What I love about this... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, we have a delay.
We had a structure that really worked well for us, which was that the front half of the book is called the parable, and that's the story that illustrates the principles of the book. And the back half is called the practice, and that the front half was my domain, and the back half is really Anna's domain. So we kind of each had our territory carved out. It was like a good division of labor. We each did what we do best, and just got to put them together. So that we just had it exceeded our expectations. We just had a wonderful time doing this. And we're having a wonderful time now with the work that's coming out of the book.
Amazing. What I was going to say about the way it's organized is that I think it's so brilliantly organized in that having the parable, because what do all clients want? What do all people who are trying to change something want? They're like, tell me a story so I can understand what you're saying. Like, what does it look like in actual life? So the parable is telling the story, but then what I also think is so helpful is that you really look at this, and the way that you teach it in this book is really small steps. It is doable things that even when you're really busy, you can do. And it is this foundational shift in the way that you relate to each other. So I want to ask you, what is the foundation of your 5 secrets to lasting love? Because that's basically what the book is about. And where did they themselves come from? Because I know the way it was laid out was kind of similar to the book 17 years ago. But where did the foundation of this come from?
Well, I used to teach at the college at the graduate level, and in psychology. And so essentially the 5 secrets are from developmental theory. That what you needed when you were an infant and a young child and an adolescent, you still need as an adult. And as you know well, because of all your teaching, there's massive gaps in people's development because of the dysfunctions that we all grew up under, and because of the kinds of interactions and behaviors that people learned as they were growing. So none of us got our narcissistic needs met in our childhood for the most part. So is it any wonder that so many people are codependent, or they're trying to control the other person in the relationship, or they have so many dysfunctional behaviors that they bring to the marriage? So, we like to say that, the emotional baggage you bring into your relationship magically unpacks after the honeymoon is over. And, that's really what happens.
Yeah, it magically unpacks whether you want it to or not. Right. So meaning it's going to come out, because that whole sort of pink cloud, or that beginning phase where your partner literally can do no wrong, that of course doesn't last, and real life does. So talk a little bit, if you would, about how the 5 secrets change marriages, or really any relationship, for the better.
Well, first I would say that early in my career, Terry, when I was training as a marriage therapist, I worked with a brilliant Israeli therapist who was my clinical trainer. And she taught, and we taught together, couples therapy groups. And in those groups, we actually did a lot of teaching. We were teaching people about behaviors, and at the same time, we would focus on one couple, and maybe there were 6 in the room. They would all get to watch the interactions, and then we would interview them about what they were seeing and how it related to their relationship. So we were constantly trying to use teaching and teaching about specific behaviors. So my entire career was colored by that.
What's so interesting about what you're saying is, and it's so evident in the book, is there's all of this observation of like yourself and your partner, and some of the stuff that you guys talk about seems simple right? If you have a nice thought about your partner, if you think their butt looks good in those jeans, how about just say it out loud? And how important it is to use language. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. The first secret is really about appreciation.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, John. We have a delay.
We do. Okay, sorry. So I was just going to say, Terry, you said this thing about how at first your partner can do no wrong, right? And one of the things we want to do is have people do is just become conscious, get more conscious about how they're interacting with their partner, because we often don't. Over the years, so many other things take our attention that it just slips. And we get to a point where our partner can do no right, because all we can focus on is the things that bother us, because we allow the stresses of our life to just kind of call the shots. We want people to get conscious of, like you say, when you have a lovely thought, get in the practice. Don't just give it voice, but get in the regular daily practice of having that thought and giving it voice. Things that we really already knew how to do, but we have to remind ourselves to do them again and keep the relationship fresh.
So right.
So I'll continue that thought. The first secret is called appreciate. And so it's all about appreciating your partner and finding ways that you actually appreciate who they are and how they behave in the world and the things that they do, so that you have that opportunity to give them that witnessing. One of the greatest drives we have is to be seen, heard, understood, and witnessed. And so when you do it, and you do it in a positive way, it has a big impact. And at the same time, we like to really frame what we call the 5 toxic behaviors. And the opposite toxic behavior of appreciation is criticism. And personally, we feel there's an epidemic of criticism in relationships across the world.
Yeah. Yep. I will agree on the epidemic. It reminds me, your 5 steps to avoid, which I would love to actually have you guys elaborate on a little more, reminds me a little bit of the Gottman Institute's, the 4 horsemen of doom, or whatever they call it, the 4 apocalyptic horsemen, which is the behavior that, indicates who's going to get divorced. So would you say more about the behaviors to avoid?
Absolutely. Each secret has an opposite, and they are criticism, neglect, which I would also phrase as ambivalence. It really has that flavor of, I'm just going to ignore you because that's kind of where I am. Control, which is, as we all know, the cornerstone of codependence and trying to change the other person and trying to control the narrative and trying to control the entire relationship. Contempt. And contempt is the point where criticism has turned into belittling the actual person. And the last one, which is counterintuitive, this is secret number 5, is stagnation. And stagnation is a really powerful one to talk about, simply because so many people enter relationships and they are looking for the relationship to feed and nourish every part of them. They want to get their needs met by the relationship, instead of recognizing that the only person that can fulfill their needs is you. Growing, changing, getting into your personal growth, understanding the places where you have dysfunctional behaviors, recognizing sort of what it is that you need to grow and flourish. That's a huge piece.
The willingness, though, to self-reflect, I feel like some folks don't have insight, it's a muscle, some people are just never going to flex that muscle, but there has to be a willingness. And I think that what I love about what you're saying with the 5 secrets is that these actionable tips, right? So it's going from appreciate, attend, allow, believe, and grow. And we just talked about the opposite of those things. But there is a requirement. And people will say to me, I've been with my husband 25 years, very actively, athletically married, I would say. Both of us very committed to it, And people will say you're very lucky, And I always think, no, I'm not. I am intentional. I'm blessed, no doubt. But luck makes it sound like, I just happen to be in the right place at the right time, which it's not that. It's that prioritizing the relationship every single day, right? That this for me is what builds a healthy relationship. So tell us a little bit, if you would, why does this work? What you're having people do. So the 5 secrets. Tell us what people should do. What can someone right now who's listening and feels like maybe their marriage is like a dumpster fire? How can they start?
Go ahead, John. I know you have something to add.
I just want to add, you said this beautiful thing about, they said that you're lucky, as if it just happened to you. There's another phrase people use, which I fell in love. We all talk about that, right? I fell in love. It's like it's something that you accidentally tripped and fell into. You had nothing to do with, and which is how it feels often. It's how it felt to the two of us when we first fell in love. We were not expecting it. I mean, it was a surprise on every level. But what we say to people is love is not a state of being. It's a practice. Love is something you actually do. It's a verb. When you first fall in love, you may fall into it. But day to day, year to year, ongoing, it is a practice. So this first secret that Ana mentioned of appreciation, when we start with people, we say, okay, find 3 times a day, find something that you love about your partner, and then take a moment to tell them. And it's not a big deal. As you said in the beginning, Terry, you said it's practical, it's simple. We're not saying completely change who you are, completely change your attitudes, because that's not practical. Nobody will do that. We're saying 3 times a day, do this thing. And for a lot of people, it feels a little awkward or almost strange at first. It's like, as you said, a muscle they haven't used for 20 years. But it's powerful. It's like exercise. If you just do it 3 times a day, and 4 or 5 is okay, and you may need to write them down. You may need to think and do homework ahead of time and say, I love the way that she does this, the way he does that, the way he is with our kids, the way he speaks to us, the way he is with strangers, the way she is with friends. Write them down 3 times a day. It is homework, it is work, it is practice, and it pays off extraordinarily strong dividends.
What I think is awesome about this, one thing is that you are taking into consideration the whole negativity bias that we have, that it is so friggin' easy to just be like, this is annoying, and you do this and you do that. And again, we remember the negative things 5 times more readily than we do the positive things. And it's like creating new neural pathways of appreciation, where we institutionalize, right, this practice of doing that. And I think that realizing, and when I was reading the book, I was thinking, it's so true that even though I feel like I'm very verbal with my husband, he's with me. I mean, it's like we're doing many of these things that you talk about, but that there are many times when I will have a kind thought. And now, from what John just said, I will write it down and sort of go out of my way to deliver it more, realizing you can't over appreciate your person, right? You can underappreciate them.
This is probably where poetry came from.
So move into the second one. So when we talk about attend, this is the second one. And the opposite of attend
opposite of attend is neglect or ambivalence. And
ambivalence, that's painful.
It is.
So in the second secret, you say, convey your love through some meaningful, tangible action. Pay attention, notice what your partner needs, wants, and loves, and then give that to them. Simple. Can I get you a cup of coffee?
Yes.
Right? Are you hungry? Do you want something to eat? Can I move that for you? I see you're doing something. But again, this does remind me a bit of the Gottman study of bidding for the other person's attention, right? Not necessarily just bidding, right? What do they say? The masters of love, 7 out of 10 times when one partner bid for the other's attention, they got it in a passive positive or an aggressive positive way. And then the disasters, 7 out of 10 times when one of them bid for their partner's attention, they approached it with a passive or aggressive negative way, or was ambivalent, ignored. I'm reading my book. I don't care about your bird, right?
Right. Exactly.
And the word attention and the word attend have the same root. It's the same concept. Here's the secret to the secret. Secret number 2. The action is powerful, but what precedes the action is you have to notice what matters to your spouse. You already know if they want a cup of coffee because you've observed them. There's a line in the book that says every individual is an undiscovered continent. It's like an unmapped territory, and it's enormous. We've been together for 25 years, and I know so much about Ana. But here's what I know. There's still so much I don't know. And I need at least 25 more years to keep mapping that continent. So that's the beauty of attend, is finding out what your spouse loves, what they need, what they want, what matters to them. It may be different than what matters to you. It probably is different.
And having the mindset that you get to do it, right? You get to. It isn't that you have to or you must. You know, I had a close friend of mine pass away recently, and another close friend of ours had a dream. And in the dream, our friend who transitioned came to my other friend and basically was saying, Allie, you get to live on earth still. Like, you get to live, but like, do it. And it's so like impacted, like the urgency of prioritizing people in our VIP section, prioritizing our own wants, desires. Like, you get to pay attention to your person. You get to make their life better. You get to instill feelings of confidence and that warm, fuzzy feeling of love. You get to do that. That's a very powerful thing, you know?
Absolutely. And it's so simple. I mean, John delivers a cup of green tea to the bedside table every single morning at like 6:30 or 7 in the morning. And I get to just relax in bed and enjoy it. And it's such a small thing, but it is such a huge thing in terms of the way it makes you feel.
Feeling loved, right?
Yes.
That's love in action. That's quote unquote small thing. I remember when I was first with my husband, with Victor, and I was trying to ask him, like, hey, if I'm doing anything that's like bothering you, or if I could do it differently, tell me, because I don't know if you don't tell me. And my husband was widowed and had 3 acting out teenage sons when I came on the scene. I feel like he was really afraid to have any more needs than was already happening. He was like, whatever you're doing is amazing, just don't leave, you know? And he used to say, when I would ask him, you know, like, is there something I'm annoying you with or whatever? He would first say, you always want there to be a problem. There's not a problem. Everything is good. I'm like, no, I don't want there to be a problem. I actually care about the minutia of your preference. I actually care. And then he was like, well, you know, when you wash your hair, sometimes it gets stuck in the sink, in the tub. Can you just take that out? I was like, of course I can. Like, I was so happy to do something.
I love that so much.
All right. There was a quote I wanted to talk about that actually I heard it in another interview that you guys did. And I think it was you who said it. And it's probably in the book as well. Love is not blind. Love is illuminating.
Yes.
Will you guys say more about that?
Absolutely. You know, love is not only not blind, but it illuminates every place in which you are still healing. It illuminates all of the ways that you are still not whole. And And because of that, love can be an incredible landscape for healing and for coming together in a way that actually makes both of you grow and both of you develop in new and much more healthy ways. But I think that people really want it to just be that, oh, love is blind, he has all these issues and I just look by them. Or that you just try to cover your own issues, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we all bring issues to the table. The question is whether or not we're going to allow them to surface and be seen and witnessed, be understood by the other person.
Speaking as a writer, when you create characters for a story, you have a blank slate. You can create anything you want. So what do? Do you create this perfect being? You don't do that, which I find so interesting. When you're a writer, you create this character. The secret to writing a great character is you have to write it until you fall in love with it as a writer. So you write these characters that have wonderful qualities, but they also have deep flaws that they struggle with. And as you write that, you fall in love with that character. That's how we marry. We don't just marry people for all the ways they're perfect and they're wonderful and they're powerful and they're brilliant and they're gorgeous. Mm-hmm. We also marry them for their flaws, even though we don't always know it at first, because we love that about them. They're things we get to participate in and we get to grow together. And we talk in the book about this kintsugi, about this Japanese art of the fractured porcelain that they put together with powdered metal, precious metals mixed with the lacquer. So you see stripes of gold and platinum. Instead of trying to hide the cracks, they revel in the cracks. They celebrate the cracks. And I think that's what love illuminates. Love is we get to find out the whole content, all about this person, their strengths, their flaws, their struggles, their hurt places, not to make them all perfect, but to just be with them and adore them. It's just a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And also that's what authenticity really is. If you're living an authentic life and your friends and your family and specifically your partner is living an authentic life with you, then they become aware of all the ways, like maybe you have anxiety in certain situations, or maybe, and it just becomes a part of the landscape rather than a problem.
Right. I think that, there's something about, at least from a therapeutic point of view, from my practice point of view, that in order for people to take like this amazing book right here called, you guys, The Go-Giver Marriage, go get it. Anyway, this book, for them to be able to do it, you have to realize that there's either, you know how like in therapy, either you talk it out or you act it out, right? There doesn't seem to be like this place in the middle. So with my clients, it's the fact that there's a parallel process going on so much of the time. This is a revolution for their mind where they go, wait a minute. So are we repeating these childhood wounds? I call it repeating relationship realities, where you're like, wow, why am I just always with the same person? Oh, wow, they're a lot like my father, or whatever that is. And so I think that for people to embrace this, there has to be at least the hope that things can change.
So we've observed that people often get this attitude or this viewpoint, perspective on their marriage that as time goes by, marriage is a limitation. Marriage is a compromise. Mm-hmm. In order to live with this other person whom I love, I will compromise by limiting my possibilities, limiting my space. Mm-hmm. And we think that's so tragic because we think it's the opposite, that the opposite is available. The opposite perspective is living with this person is an opportunity to live a bigger life than I could ever have lived before. And part of that is what you're saying, Terry. It's the opportunity to heal those places, to replay those childhood, those relationship realities, to replay those situations and grow through them, transcend them. That's what your spouse represents, is a healing partner, really.
It's so true. I so agree. I have to say, you guys, I so thoroughly enjoyed this book. And I love how just how it is. So you guys watching, listening, whether it's on YouTube, whether you're listening to the podcast itself, the name of the book is The Go-Giver Marriage, a little story about the 5 secrets to lasting love by John David Mann and Ana Gabriel Mann. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for spending so much time. Tell my listeners and viewers where they can find you.
We are on Instagram
website?
and all the social channels.
You first.
Okay.
All our social channels are our full names, John David Mann and Ana Gabriel Mann. So we're on Instagram and LinkedIn and everywhere else. Our website is gogivermarriage.com, just one word, gogivermarriage.com. And on that site, you can find all our programs that we do. We have a coaching program that's about to release. We also have workshops that we do and individual coaching as well.
Fantastic. You guys, go get this book. I really, really loved it. Thanks again, you guys. It has been my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What a joy.